Okay, so first thing I want to say is that, yes, I know, I'm late with this video. It's taken us all the way up until the end of the Edge of Fate to make a DPS video for the Edge of Fate. We have Renegades coming out in, I think, 9 days now. Still, I wanted to make today's video because I still wanted to show you guys the best DPS in the game for every class for the Edge of Fate, because what I'm going to show you today is still going to carry over into Renegades. Because DPS in the Edge of Fate / Renegades, assuming that things won't change too much in Renegades, because they probably won't, because Mint Retrograde is still going to be doing as much damage as it is now. It's only taking an ammo nerf. DPS can be summarized essentially into this. You start with Mint Retrograde, and then you take 1 out of 3 exotic heavies. The first is Whirling Ovation, believe it or not. The second is Parasite, and the third is Finality's Auger. So you take Mint, and then choose one of those 3. And I know that sounds kind of insane, but it really is just that simple, and I have the receipts to prove it, as you'll see in the rotations later in the video. And yes, there obviously is some variation with rocket rotation still being pretty decent. You know, Hezen Vengeance is still very much the best rocket in the game, or one of the best rockets in the game. And you have other things like the new submersion crossbow, which has some interesting stuff going on with it with aggregate charge, but we're not going to be going into that today, because what I'm going to show you is just far more easy to use and far more effective. So for each class in this video, I'm going to assign one of those 3 exotic heavies and show you how to best use it to optimize the DPS with it. And as you can see, we are going to be starting with the Warlocks. Now, Warlocks are essentially the best class in the game now, and the reason why is because of the buddies, and they're going to be even better with some other changes coming in Renegades, but for now, they're still very good just because of the buddies. With the Warlock, we're going to start with a subclass real quick. Needle Storm is the future. That's basically all you need to know. Do not bother with any of these other supers, except maybe Nova Bomb if you're going for like a Star Eater angle, but Needle Storm is the best. Make sure you're using this, especially with the Metaiodoxia changes coming in Renegades, so please use Needle Storm. After that, we have Storm Grenade. Aspects don't really matter except Helion. You're going to want Helion and Storm Grenade. Then for the fragments, the only one that actually matters for the rotation is Facet of Dominance, because this is going to make it so your arc grenades, aka your arc souls, are going to be able to jolt targets, and it's also going to make it so your freezing singularity transcendent grenade is going to apply weaken with its void component, so it's going to give you access to a debuff. So that's it for the subclass. On our running loadout, we are going to have Getaway Artist, which I'm sure most of you are using at this point. If you are a Warlock and you are not using Getaway Artist, like, what are you doing? Come on now, this is like the best build in the game. Then for the DPS loadout is going to be Sanguine Alchemy. This is your best friend for Warlock DPS in the current meta. We are going to be switching this to Metaiodoxia in Renegades, because that's going to be increasing the damage of our Needle Storm by equivalent amounts to Curious Thundercrash, is apparently what Bungie is saying. We're going to be using both, but for now, Sanguine Alchemy is the play. And for the Warlock specifically, I want to show you how the rotation works with Whirling Ovation. Now, this is actually quite funny, because when this weapon came out and we did like an initial review of it, I wrote this weapon off as basically just really weird and almost terrible. I'm not sure if I described it exactly like that, but it was kind of barely scratching the surface, and actually this weapon is really decent for DPS. It's not maybe quite as good as some of the other options, but it's still very solid, like remarkably solid, as you will come to see. And the best way I can describe it is it's like a strand Parasite that does like a little bit more damage and is just a bit more nuanced in how you make it get to that highest damage percentage. So just a quick segment on Whirling Ovation here. It's going to make it so when you deal damage with other weapons, it's going to charge up this anticipation meter in the bottom left, and the higher that meter has in charge, the quicker you're going to be able to get out your rocket. As you can see here, it charges pretty quickly. But now, if I have 0 in my anticipation meter, it's going to charge a lot slower. And the way that you get that charge is, like I said, dealing damage with other weapons. And with Mint Retrograde, which you are going to be using in this rotation, when you have a buff and a debuff, it takes 4 shots of Mint to fully charge your anticipation meter. So if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, that's without a buff and a debuff. We're almost there. So if you have a buff like Radiance and a debuff like Weaken going, which you will in the rotation, it will take 4 shots of Mint to get this fully charged. So that is essentially the rotation. We're doing 4 shots of Mint, then 1 shot of Whirling Ovation, and then we're just repeating it. No need to worry about bait and switch timers or anything. That's the only thing. So before we get into how to do the rotation itself, I do just quickly want to highlight the stats, because in the Edge of Fate, your stats are way more important for damage than they used to be pre-Edge of Fate. Now we have things like the weapon stat, we have the super stat affecting the damage of your super. So for Warlock, this is how I like to do my stats. I like like to have really high weapons, almost 200, and then not pour as much into super, and then a little bit of grenade as well. So I have 190 weapons. Then I have 3 super fonts on my helmet, which is going to give me 50 super. So overall, if I factor in my natural stats, that's going to be around 160 for my needle storm. Then for grenade, I have 100 natural, and then 2 fonts on my arms. You could make this 3 fonts, which will get me all the way up to like 150. That is to just improve the damage of my buddies, which in this case are going to be Arc, Soul, and Helion, just a little bit. Basically, if you're a Warlock, focus on grenade, super, and weapons, but in my opinion, prioritize weapons first, then, you know, divvy up the rest as you see fit. So in terms of how to actually do this rotation, before we head into damage, we want to make sure that we pop our buddies. Now, the reason for that is because on our damage loadout, I've actually changed from an arc grenade to a vortex grenade. And the discrepancies between the running and damage loadouts, don't worry about them. I will have the dim links to both in the description, so you won't have to worry about any of this. It's all going to be handled for you. But essentially, the reason we changed to the vortex grenade is because when our transcendence runs out, we still want a way to get weaken onto the target, and a void grenade is going to allow us to do that with facet of dominance. So that's why we change it here. That's just something to be aware of. So as I said, to start the rotation, you're going to want to pop both of your buddies. So we're going to go Arc Soul here, we're going to go Helion, then I'm going to swap to my damage loadout. I'm going to look towards Greg here, I'm going to pop my Transcendence, I'm going to go Needle Nade, then we're going to go Needle Storm into our Whirling Ovation. There we go, and now we should be able to shoot 4 shots onto the target, and that'll charge our next Needle Storm, or our next Whirling Ovation, sorry. So we're going to go all the way here, it's fully charged, and again, throw in a couple arcane needles here and there. We're going to do 4 shots again, make sure we get the weaken. Another shot here. We've maxed out anticipation. We fire this off. Here we go. Bit more ability spam, bit more mint. 3, then 4. Then we have our anticipation ready again. I can pop my Helion here. Back to mint. As you can see, that's about it there. We got about 2,500 DPS. Obviously, this is going to be more when you're in a Well of Radiance. So now, I would like you to watch an actual clip of me using this versus Greg to show you how powerful the rotation actually is. Let's see how much this can do. Blow me up. Please don't kill me, Greg. I'm right next to you. There we go. Okay.
Ow.
Nice. So yeah, definitely don't underestimate Whirling Ovation. It is a very solid exotic, and actually I forgot to mention before we go, the reason why I would actually suggest using this on Warlock versus any other class is because of Sanguine. Now, on your boot surges, you're going to want Solar Surge, and the reason for it not being Strand Surge is because you are getting these Strand Surges from having Needle Storm equipped and then with Sanguine Alchemy at the same time. So as I'm sure a good portion of you are aware by now, if you are standing in any rift while wearing Sanguine, it is going to give you ×4 surge that matches your super element. So because we have Needle Storm, it's going to give me ×4 Strand Surge. And actually, if you didn't know, the damage split of Whirling Ovation is both solar and strand. So the impact of the rocket is strand and the explosion is solar, which is why we use triple solar surge on our boots to buff the solar portion of the rocket. Then the strand portion is buffed via Sanguine. So yeah, that's why Whirling Ovation is the most fitted to Warlock, but you can make it work on other classes. It just means that your surge split won't be as optimal. So that about does it for the Warlock. You know, we killed Greg in one phase, which means that the rotation is generally pretty solid. If you're able to kill Greg without any help or from just your own, then that means it's pretty good. So now we are going to move on to the Titan. So for the Titan, the exotic that we are using is going to be Parasite. Now I'm going to show you how to best use Parasite with the Titan and all the techs that are associated with it to actually make it a very formidable DPS option. So let's quickly go over the subclass, starting with the super, which is going to be Thunder Crash. This is basically the best super in the game. Might be rivaled by Mattia, Doxia, Needle Storm in Renegades. Don't know yet, but it's still very solid with, you know, Curus, so definitely take Thunder Crash. After that, I have Pulse Grenades. Then for your fragments, the only ones that you care about are Facet of Courage, and then the rest actually don't really matter. So all you want is Facet of Courage to improve the damage of your Thunder Crash by 10% when you affect a target with a Darkness debuff, so just Facet of Courage. After that, weapons-wise, once again, it is just Mint Retrograde. Like I said at the beginning, the meta is very simple. It's Mint plus Exotic Heavy, and we're just gonna have Parasite. So let me go into why we are using Parasite and why it's actually very good. And the reason for that is because of a particular boot mod known as Solar Holster. This mod is going to make it so it will reload your Parasite in the background after you have done firing it. So as you can see here, if I shoot my Parasite, stow it, after around 2 seconds, There we go, it's reloaded. I can do the same thing again. And it's actually pretty quick, you know, you only need to wait like, it feels like 2 seconds and then you have it reloaded again. So if you didn't know that, Solar Holster works with Parasite. It's actually the only single shot weapon that Solar Holster or that the holsters work with. But speaking of holsters, there's actually another holster tech that I wanted to show you, and that is when you are in your super animation, it actually counts as holstering your Parasite. So it is going to reload itself during your super, and then when you come out, you're going to be able to shoot it again. So essentially what that looks like is if I shoot Carl with my Parasite here, then I super right after. When I come out, I'm going to be able to shoot Parasite again. It makes the rotation flow a lot nicer, just a pretty cool tech to be aware of, and we are going to be using that in the rotation itself. Again, before we get into anything related to the rotation, we are just going to quickly go over the stats that I use with this build, and again, it is going to be heavily weapons and super focused with a side of grenade as well. On my Titan, I like to prioritize getting 200 super just to make my Thunder Crash hit really hard, because typically you can get, you know, at least 1 or 2 of them in a phase as long as it's long enough, and then I have my weapons relatively high as well. And actually, you yourself can get very similar stats to this without needing illegal armor from before the Edge of Fate. The only thing that is illegal in this loadout is my Cuirass, which I managed to get with a pretty decent roll before the Edge of Fate came out. Very high super, very high weapons, as you can see. But all of these pieces here, they are all new armor. They're all gunner pieces with various tertiaries in like super or, you know, whatever, super or grenade. So I've gone for 170 weapons, 150 super, and 114 grenade. Then those are topped off with fonts on both my helmet, my gloves, and then I have surges on my boots. Now, as for the surge split for this rotation, because we need to dedicate 1 slot to a solar holster to make Parasite work properly, you are only limited to 1 of each, which in this case will be Strand for Mint Retrograde, then Solar for Parasite itself. However, this doesn't actually end up mattering that much because you are still going to be doing a lot of damage. So despite the surges not being quite as optimal, it is still a very good damage. Also, by the way, every single Mint Retrograde that you see used in this video is using Rewind Elemental Honing. I am not going for bait and switch. I am actually trying my hardest to get high stacks of Elemental Honing because at ×4 of Honing, it is a 23-second duration, and it's also the same percentage as bait and switch at 30%. So if you can get ×4, you might as well use Honing because it lasts over twice as long as bait and switch and it doesn't require as much maintenance to upkeep. But again, with regards to mods and everything, I will have the dim links in the description for both of these, the running and DPS, so don't worry about that. You can copy those in the description. So as far as the rotation itself is concerned, let's take a look at that now. Essentially, with this rotation, there is only one thing that you need to worry about, and that is the very beginning where the timing of your Parasite holster is only slightly offset. And what I mean by that is that when I stow this Parasite, I can shoot 2 shots of mint, and then I can pull it out again, and it's loaded. However, for some reason, whenever you start the rotation with presumably a ×20 Parasite, you actually have to shoot 3 shots of mint rather than 2 to then have it fully holstered by the time you pull it back out. Not really sure why this is, but it's just been a thing for the longest time, so just do that first. So essentially, it's going to be 3, 2, 2, 2, 2 with regards to shooting number of mint shots. Now, let's actually do a quick demo of the rotation. We're going to take the holster tech that we discussed earlier and apply that to the beginning and the 3 shots of mint, and this is what it's going to look like. So we're going to pop our Transcendence here. We're going to do Parasite, Transcendent Grenade into Super. That's going to give us a Courage. Then we're going to shoot Parasite again. Use this to proc Honing. Then we're going to do 3 shots of mint. Then we go 3 here. Then into Parasite. And 2 shots of mint here. And another Parasite. And also be sure to do your Parasite next to the target so you proc Worm Byproduct to increase the damage of your Mint Retrograde as well, because that will increase the damage by 15% of your Mint Retrograde. That is also very important. Also failed to mention it earlier. Make sure you are proccing Worm Byproduct. Of course, if you are in a boss where you cannot proc Worm Byproduct, say like it's a ranged boss, for example, something like Parasite may not be the best option to use in that encounter. This is maybe where you would use something like Whirling Ovation or Finality's Auger instead. But if the boss is close range and you can activate Worm Byproduct to increase the damage of your mint by another 15%, then definitely make sure you use Parasite because then it is the best option. So that's enough yapping. Take a look at this clip here without a debuff, where again, I do some pretty serious damage to Greg.
Oh my god, it's instant. How the hell? Greg, Jesus.
Oh, there we go. No debuff required.
Okay. Wow.
Shout out to Chicken.
Okay, so yeah, that is essentially how you use Parasite on a Titan. You can also do this on the other classes as well, but I figured it would just be most suitable to show you it on a Titan here because, you know, Thunder Crash does a lot of damage, works with the Stow tech, which is pretty nice. So yeah, that is how to do the best DPS on a Titan. So now let's finish up with Hunters. All right, so with the Hunter, we are going to be finishing up with Finality's Auger, the last in the trio of the 3 exotic heavies that I showed you at the beginning of the video, and I think it's just pretty suitable for the Hunter. So I'm going to show you how that all works. But first, let's just quickly talk about the subclass. We are going to be on Golden Gun, of course, because that's going to give us the most damage, especially with things like Celestial Nighthawk. I have Radiant Dodge here to make myself radiant when going and using my Golden Gun to improve the damage by 20%. Then fragments-wise, we actually have a couple which are going to be pretty important for the Hunter. The first of which is obviously Facet of Dominance to make our Void Grenades we can target, and then we are also going to want Facet of Dawn so that hits with our Snare Bomb not only weaken the target, but also make us radiant, again to let us benefit from Golden Gun whenever we have it back, just to make sure we have the Radiant ready to go to improve the damage of it. And the funny thing with Hunters is that because both of our recent rad activities, which are Epic and normal Desert Perpetual, every single boss in those raids is very much total damage oriented, Hunters have essentially been relegated to not deal DPS anymore, but rather be more focused on total damage. This is a DPS video, so we are going to talk about how to deal the best DPS, but I did want to mention that if you are a Hunter and you are actively doing things like Desert Perpetual, your best bet with regards to dealing damage is not going to be Celestial Nighthawk, rather Lucky Pants, and just using the 3-shot variant of Marksman, because this is going to be doing several things for you and your team. It's going to be creating several orbs for your Titans, which have more damage dealing supers like Thunder Crash, so you're going to be enabling your Titans. Essentially, the role of a Hunter in the current sandbox is a Titan enabler, which is a bit sad when you think about it, but Hunters, you are getting that absolutely enormous Still Hunt buff in Renegades, so just remember that. You are going to be the DPS class, at least with regards to crit-based bosses in Renegades, so just remember that. 40% buff to Still Hunt and Sniper's Meditation, massive, massive, massive. But with regards to Desert Perpetual, both variants, Lucky Pants is going to be very good because the super recharge rate on Lucky Pants with a hand cannon and Finality's Auger and Mint Retrograde is absurd, especially with, you know, Marksman Golden Gun being counted as a roaming super. You get it back so incredibly quickly that you are able to feed your Titans non-stop. So this is very valuable, though your DPS does suffer as a result. However, I also do want to show you guys how to deal some serious DPS, and that is going to involve using Celestial Nighthawk and just spamming Mint and spamming Finality's Auger. It's very simple, so let's get into it. Quickly, again, with the stats, high weapon, high super. I've maybe played about 20 hours or so of Hunter in all of Edge of Fate, so my Hunter armor isn't the best. As you can see here, I'm still using illegal armor from before the Edge of Fate, and I have an illegal Nighthawk as well. That's not even an amazing illegal Nighthawk, but I've still managed to wrangle around 160 weapons and 130 super, which will be made up to 180 with my super fonts. Again, grenade fonts on the gloves to give myself a little bit more grenade, but mine is sitting at a pitiful 12, so if yours is better, then, you know, bravo, because mine isn't fantastic. Bottom line, high weapon, high super for stats. Okay, so one of the key things to remember with regards to using Finality's Auger is that if you have the catalyst, which is bait and switch, you need to manage bait and switch because it gives you 30% more damage, so you need to make sure that you have that perk activated at all times or minimal downtime of the perk, essentially. So for me, it's kind of like I count in my head sometimes to kind of work out when I need to re-trigger bait and switch, but you can also use things like timers on perks like Elemental Honing, for example, or just kind of intuit it, but just remember you need to be on top of bait and switch to be doing the most damage. So as far as the rotation itself is concerned, you're going to want to open with your turret, and then we're going to go into a couple abilities. So I'm going to go turret here, I'm going to pop my Transcendence, I'm going to Radiant Dodge forwards, I'm going to go Melee Grenade, Paint Carl with my Finality, I'm going to go into our Nighthawk here, swap to my secondary, and then into Mint, and then we have bait and switch going on the turret, and then we're just going to spam Mint, never let go, make sure you re-weaken when it goes away. Actually, our turret disappeared here, so I'm going to cause a new one to appear here. I'm going to go Grenade, and into Mint again. We have bait and switch procced, and we're just going to keep spamming Mint. Just keep spamming it, stay on top of your weaken uptime, and your bait and switch. I think around about now is when I should repop. There we go. I got bait and switch back. And actually, I am getting my super back pretty quickly, even though it is Nighthawk, even though it is like slightly slower charging with having that on. I can get another one here, and the DPS is very solid. It's going to be more than Lucky Pants. So enough of me yapping. Here's how the rotation looks in practice.
It's quick. Oh, there we go, baby.
Whoa, what the?
There we go. Oh, I might have got a chunk, but...
So there we go. That is your bog standard finality rotation. Very easy to do. Only thing you need to worry about is managing your weaken and bait and switch uptime. However, if you're in a group, you know, you're probably going to have somebody using tractor cannon, so you only have to worry about the weaken part. It'll only be down to bait and switch, which is pretty easy. And as you can see, Nighthawk is still very good. Despite Lucky Pants being very popular in Desert Perpetual, Nighthawk is still very, very solid. And also, like I mentioned earlier, before we end off the video, I did want to say that, again, Hunters, you guys are going to be very, very strong with regards to crit-based bosses in Renegades, because Still Hunt is getting a massive 40% buff to its damage, and they are letting the Nighthawk variant work with Sniper's Meditation, which is essentially a 99% confirmed artifact perk, which is returning. And for those of you who are new, Sniper's Meditation was an older perk from episode Echoes, basically Final Shape launch season, which improved the damage of your sniper rifles up to 15%. So if you take 40% buff to Still Hunt, 15% from Sniper's Meditation, 15% from 200 weapon stat, you're going to be dealing so much more damage with Still Hunt. It's actually absurd. If you want a full breakdown, I'm pretty sure Aegis has done like a nice video breaking down exactly how much, or exactly how crazy this exotic is going to be. Get yourself a Still Hunt if you haven't already, because that's going to be very good. And then just use that in Renegades. It's going to be very, very solid. So that is going to do it for today's video, guys. I know that it was very late. You know, we have 9 days until Renegades, but you know, I still wanted to make it because a lot of what I said here today is still going to be very relevant in Renegades, or at least I think it's going to be, because we know that Finality's Auger is not getting nerfed. We know that the damage of Mint Retrograde is not getting nerfed. The damage nor the super gen, same goes for Finality's Auger. Whirling Ovation is definitely not getting a nerf, and Parasite isn't getting a nerf either, because we've seen all of the articles about weapon tuning and all sorts, and there was no mention of any damage nerfs. So all of these rotations are still going to be doing the exact same damage. They're still going to be just as effective. The only problem is that Mint is going to be losing a little bit of ammo, which, you know, is fine. You can make that up though. It's only losing 4 bricks, so it's not the end of the world. It just means that your total damage is going to be slightly reduced, not the end of the world. So yeah, like I said, you know, there's going to be dim links to all of these builds in the description if you're going to want to copy them. You know, feel free to go back in the video and watch the rotations to copy how to learn them, but they're all pretty simple, to be honest. It's just like, use your exotic heavy, go back to Mint, manage bait and switch, manage weaken, whatever. It's all fine. It's very simple to learn, and at the very least, I hope you learned something from today's video as well. So despite me being late, I hope you still enjoyed. So that is going to be it for today, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.